Well, good afternoon. I'm Andrew Vaughan. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of REDEVCO. We are a European Dutch-based investment management business managing a portfolio of around 7.5 billion euros across Europe with about 300 assets. So in terms of current strategy and maybe a little bit of history, so we absolutely our history and our heritage, all 180 years of it for our private owners, is very much embedded in retail. And we're very much known as a retail specialist within the European market. So we are evolving our strategy, but I should make it very clear, we are not turning our back on retail, not at all. And still 90% of our current portfolio is retail or retail within mixed use buildings. But we are evolving that strategy, and the reason we're evolving it is probably no big surprise to most people that know about the retail sector today. It is a tough sector, and we've done a lot to upgrade and improve the portfolio we have, but we also feel it makes sense to diversify and add in other sectors. We started with that really about 5 years ago when we moved very much to mixed use. We started doing a lot more leisure, food and beverage, theatres, hotels, and within towards that experiential retail. And of course, we can talk about that and the impact of the last 9 months at some point later. So mixed use, we were already very much sort of investing in. We then added and started investing in the residential sector a couple of years ago. That's gone very well, and we've announced recently that we're also going to extend. We're going to extend beyond retail, residential mixed use, also towards urban logistics, and we're exploring, if you like, around alternatives, primarily around the kind of digitalization of society and cities, and a sense that we have to also tap into this, if you like, new market. So not turning our back on retail at all. We're still very firm believers in retail, but we feel it's prudent to extend the diversification which we'd already started five or so years ago into additional sectors. So it's been so we opened up in terms of opening up our platform to external investors. We started that around 5 years ago. We now have a number of external clients. 40% actually of the assets we manage are owned by or in joint venture with external investment clients. So that's gone from zero in quite a short space of time. And I think it's been both enormously rewarding for us as a business, because in a sense it's the sort of the ultimate test of your brand, if you like, as a company, that people are prepared to work with you. And we work with some fantastic blue chip clients, and so I think that's been really rewarding. And we've always said that we don't try and work with clients purely for the equity and the financial. It's also that we work with people that we get something more from than just equity. And that might be that we have fantastic conversations around the analysis and the way we might appraise an investment. It might be that we have good conversation with people like PGGM around ESG and our joint beliefs on sustainability, and we've committed in that joint venture that portfolio will be net zero carbon by 2030. So each client brings something more than just equity, and that is what I think we find very rewarding. How we're going to find growth is we're going to do it both through organic and inorganic ways, and that's a little bit different for us, to be honest. Historically, we've always been more focused on organic growth, which is great, but it tends to be a little bit slower than potentially inorganic growth. So no, we are starting to look at a couple of newer ways to grow our assets under management, and that could be through for example, pitching for a mandate to manage on behalf of an owner where we're not buying the assets. We're literally just using our asset management development capability to manage on behalf of others. We will also look at making our equity go a little bit further through that joint venture route. And we'll also look in addition at potentially corporate acquisitions of other investment platforms that we think are complementary to what we already have, and particularly in that area of new sectors where we don't have expertise today, that we have to build that up. Of course, we can build that capability organically, but it's a whole lot quicker to do it through the acquisition of a platform where you have all the skills and you have the track record already. We've always invested in and managed and tried to create mixed use buildings. I mean, when I talk about retail, we talk really about, for us, city centre retail or downtown retail if you're in the US. So often our shops have offices above them, sometimes hotels and residential. So we've always, if you like, been a big believer in mixed use. And once we added in residential into the mix, we found that actually there was an enormous benefit that we had understanding both residential and retail, because often they come together, and a lot of residential specialists don't want to touch a building that's got retail in it, and sometimes and vice versa, whereas we actually see it as an enormous benefit to have the combination of the two, plus also other uses like co-working and hotels and so on, which we have in our portfolio. So I think there's an enormous future for mixed-use buildings, because there's a massive challenge to repurpose buildings, particularly retail and perhaps offices, right? I mean, I said at another forum recently that I wondered whether COVID-19 to offices might look a little bit like e-commerce to retail, in the sense of it will fundamentally change the way we use offices and the way we think about offices. And it won't mean in the same way as e-commerce doesn't mean you don't need shops, just means maybe you need different shops and maybe less shops. It won't mean we don't need offices, you maybe just need them for different reasons and maybe less space. So I think the repurposing of buildings, whether that's from large scale retail to mixed use buildings, which we do a lot of, and we've got great examples, for example, in Lille, where we converted a former department store, 25,000 square meters, into a multi-use, multi-sector mixed use building, where we also created a kind of digital community around a combination of both international brands and local entrepreneurs, and a real we really created a community within that building. There'll be more of that sort of repurposing of particularly, I think, the large scale retail. So there's enormous value to be created, and not just value as in financial value, but I think value to cities, because these buildings do need to be repurposed. I said it at the beginning, I mean, our history is totally steeped and embedded in retail, and we are not turning our back on retail at all. We're firmly of the view that retail actually offers one of the best opportunities in Europe today, to be perfectly honest, for the value investor, but you probably have to be more at the value end. So we are still huge believers in retail, but retail is different and will be different going forward. And I think, what does that landscape look like? I think you have enormous polarization between the winners and the losers. I think there's going to be an element, because COVID-19 has accelerated the trends that were happening anyway. I think there's going to be an enormous there's going to be a case where it's really last man standing. So for the retailers that are able to survive this current crisis, they're going to be in a very good position, because people will continue to shop and go back to shops when we come out the other side of this. So who will not survive? I think this is Darwinism at its not at its best, but this is Darwinism. This is just the survival of the fittest, and the ones that won't make it will be the brands that are weak brands, or have a weak balance sheet, or the people, as the classic, if it didn't exist today, you wouldn't invent it type brands. So those are the ones that won't make it. So who comes out the other side? The ones with strong brands. I think particularly those with strong brands with a strong ethical and environmental stamp on their brand, I think those brands will continue to flourish. I think the global brands who have strong balance sheets will do well. So there'll be a lot that won't make it, absolutely. And I think we've been saying for a long time, and others also say that, I think, you're in that convenience or experience category. I think that still applies. And I think the difference is convenience has done quite well, actually, in the sense of when everyone is more local and more at home. Experience is obviously almost dead right now in terms of, food markets and leisure and food and beverage. If it's not dead, it's seriously struggling. But it will bounce back, because as soon as we do come out the other side of this, and the vaccination is found, well, it's not found, it's there, that once there's sufficient number of people vaccinated and we start getting back to some sort of normal life, that experience retail will survive. But the point is that, 85 to 90% of all goods globally still touch the store at some point. They're either bought in the store or they're bought online and they're collected in store. So, and there's so much evidence now that, if you open up a store in an area, your online sales go up. And if you have a good day in the shops on a Sunday, then your online sales on a Monday go up. So there's this, it's a very clearly established now that being pure online is quite difficult, and being pure offline with no online offer is also difficult. So it's all about the combination. I think it's so well established now that no one really should doubt the need for shops and the future of shops. It's just not all shops. And so obsolescence is here. It's been here for quite a while. I think there's a huge opportunity around the repurposing of buildings, and that's all part of the evolution of cities. Our office in Amsterdam used to be a garage, and the hotel I stay in Amsterdam used to be an office building, and my favorite bakery in Dorset in the UK used to be a petrol station. All of these buildings have been repurposed, and it's just a moment in time as retail develops that we know we need less of the stuff, and we need more residential, and we probably need more of maybe we need less offices going forward. But there will be other uses that will replace, and so it's all about I think not just the evolution of retail buildings, but the evolution of cities. Yes, I mean, in terms of our contribution, if you like, to sustainable cities of the future, I think it's absolutely true. And I think almost any manager today without a credible sustainability policy and ESG beliefs is almost not credible in itself. So it's essential. It's just fundamentally part of business. But I think we want to go beyond that. And I think actually the COVID crisis has made a lot of people reflect and think not just about their own health and well-being, but about the health and well-being of cities that many of us live in. And I think so many things I do believe will change, whether it's the amount of commuters you have going into big cities, whether it's the amount of time people do spend in offices versus working from home, and whether that means actually it impacts a little bit on the larger cities versus maybe the mid-sized cities. So I think COVID-19 will have a fundamental impact on the way people do both live, work, and in it to a large extent to shop. And I think there's a lot of things that have come out of it, but what I do believe is cities will have to become more local in a sense. I'm a big believer in the so-called 15-minute city that people talk about, the fact that you can walk and cycle everywhere. And being based in Amsterdam, you know all about the 15-minute city because everybody just cycles everywhere, and it's fantastic because it's totally geared up for that. So I think, yes, of course, sustainability is at the heart of what we do, has been for many years, but we want to go further than that in a sense, because I think this is a moment to reset. And there have been a few beneficiaries of this terrible crisis. There's obviously been a lot of people that have suffered, and it's been terrible on many levels. Possibly one of the few beneficiaries has been the environment and the planet. And I think we have to, our challenge really is to take some of the good practices that have come, but changes in behaviour that have come out of this crisis, and make sure we take them forward for the good of the environment and the good of cities generally.